They are lost. They are humiliated. Wolff kicks his team in the balls. These are all comments made by old F1 drivers and Helmut Marko after Mercedes crossed the finish line 50 seconds behind race winner Verstappen. Ever worse is that Verstappen was cruising the whole race, while Mercedes had to go all in to secure a P5 and P7. But that is not the worst. Red Bull openly fired shots at Mercedes. In this video, I will talk about what Red Bull had to say about Mercedes, what Mercedes had to say about Red Bull, and how Mercedes think they can close the gap. Now, without wasting any more time, let's dive right into it. Mercedes has just a bit over a week to get their car ready for the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix. This doesn't sound like much, but in the world of F1, where 900 people are working to improve the performance of two cars, this can be enough to find extra pace. But how can Mercedes find this extra pace? To understand the solutions that are offered, we first have to do a recap to understand the exact problems the W14 and Mercedes itself currently faces. During preseason, it became clear that the Mercedes has an aerodynamic and mechanical issue. Their aerodynamic issue shows in the lack of downforce that makes the car slow in the medium and high-speed corners. As shown on the map, you can see that during qualifying there wasn't a single point either on the straights or in the corners where Mercedes had the fastest car. Already before the race, Toto Wolff disregarded the W14 as a car which they will never get competitive with the current aerodynamic concept. While fans and experts are in agreement that Toto was right about this, it did make Hamilton upset. Not because he thinks the W14 can become competitive with this concept. No, because he already expected these issues from happening. In an interview with BBC Sports, Hamilton said the following: "Last year, I told them all the issues we have with the car. I have driven so many cars in my life, so I know what a car needs. I know what a car doesn't need." A crucial part, Hamilton explains, is taking ownership of people's own failures. To quote him exactly, he said, "It's really all about accountability. It's about owning up and saying, yeah, you know what? We didn't listen to you. It is not where it needs to be, and we have to work." All these problems play in favor of Red Bull, who have no sympathy for Mercedes. Helmut Marko had to laugh when talking about Mercedes' massive gap on Red Bull. Mercedes seems to be lost somewhere. I'm curious what they will do next because the budget cap makes it near impossible to keep on updating the car. If that is already a new problem, how the heck do you build a new car? Unless they find a golden solution. But I don't think that will happen looking at the recent affairs. Mercedes created their own lack of solutions. It is their problem. Toto Wolff openly gave up on this year's title. "We won't win the title this year. After the first race, I believe Red Bull will win every race this year. Even Aston Martin is ahead of us. They took in someone from Red Bull and all of a sudden their car is 2 seconds faster. I have never seen such a leap forward in F1. Ted Kravitz, journalist of Sky Sports, thinks that the internal problems are causing more harm to the development of the car than the lack of potential from the concept itself. He even went as far to say that Hamilton and Wolff are not always on the same page. Ironically, Wolff himself claimed that this is nonsense and that he and Lewis are still part of the same choir. Even more ironic is that Wolff pointed out that the engineers will get extra help from Hamilton himself. I think it is ironic when Hamilton himself said that the lack of performance comes because the engineers didn't listen to his advice. The problems seem to build up more and more, and Horner has something to say about that too. If Hamilton did retire, who on earth would they take? That would drop Mercedes really in the shit if he decides to retire. Each team is making progress, but Mercedes is making a mess. With so many issues, what can Mercedes do to turn the tide? As mentioned earlier, an F1 team consists of over 900 people, so in order to build a great car, you need the best people. Unfortunately for Mercedes, they lost a lot of people from their aerodynamic and engine department to teams like Red Bull and Aston Martin. However, in an attempt to increase the level of performance from the staff, Mercedes hired ex-Red Bull HR director Jane Poole as a special advisor. It is her job to streamline the work processes and advise Mercedes on how to work within the budget cap. Okay. I did have to laugh when I first heard that Poole is going to advise Mercedes how to work with the budget cap, as we all know how Red Bull worked under the budget cap in 2021. Anyways, besides Poole, Toto also brought back star engineer James Allison, who worked at the Ineos sailing team as chief technical officer. Allison has a long list of developing winning cars. He was on the team during Schumacher's dominant era at Ferrari before joining Renault and helping Alonso win his 2 world titles. His recent success was the Mercedes, where he won the Constructors' title 4 times from 2017 till 2021. As a result, Mike Elliott, who developed the W13 and W14 as lead engineer, had to make way and is not part of the livery design team. These drastic staff changes show how drastic the problems are. What makes it even worse is the restrictions in budget cap and CFD wind tunnel time. So what about those upgrades? Does Mercedes have anything planned for Saudi Arabia? In an interview with Chauvelin on Wednesday morning, Chauvelin, technical director of Mercedes, looked back on Bahrain and explained the changes Mercedes will make for Saudi Arabia. Sunday was challenging. It is clear that we have a lot of work to do, and we need to come up with a plan to find any improvements. We already lack grip, and in combination with high tire degradation, it made it impossible for our drivers to attack. But it is encouraging to see how the team handles tough situations. This is the second season we are starting with a big gap, and to be frank, this situation is unacceptable for the team. We have a couple days to gather the data, analyze it, and make improvements for Saudi Arabia. There is good news for Mercedes, besides bodywork improvements coming up soon, and Wolff already hinting that one concept has proven itself under the new ground effect regulations. Mercedes should benefit from the characteristics the Jeddah circuit offers. To give you a comparison between Bahrain and Saudi Arabia in terms of expected tire degradation, on Pirelli's Tyre Analysis, Bahrain scored a 5 out of 5 for asphalt abrasion, whereas Jeddah only scores a 2 out of 5, indicating much lower tire degradation. More good news comes in the form of downforce needed. Whereas Bahrain required a 3 out of 5 downforce level, Jeddah scores once again a 2 out of 5. Even better is there are only 4 slow-speed corners out of the 27 corners total. During the race in Bahrain, it became evident how much Mercedes was struggling to find grip coming out of slow corners. Their lack of grip allowed Alonso to pass at places which are normally very unconventional to do so. Whereas Pirelli brought the 3 hardest compounds to Bahrain, they now bring the C2, C3, and C4 compounds to Saudi Arabia. The softer compounds should help Mercedes even further with their mechanical grip problem. However, although Jeddah should favor Mercedes more in terms of track characteristics, it does not automatically mean they will be ahead of the field. According to data collected by Formula Stats, Mercedes is still almost 1 second per lap slower than Red Bull, as shown on this graph. That Mercedes is not in a good position right now is an understatement, but I am curious to see how they will manage to turn things around. The new regulations certainly didn't make it easier, and while most of the other teams decided to follow Red Bull's and Ferrari's concept, Mercedes stayed stuck to their own aerodynamic concept. Initially, Mercedes said they expect to generate more downforce from their concept compared to that of the others. In an attempt to solve their porpoising, they used lots of resources, hoping that once they solved that, it would give them such an additional boost in performance that would bring them to the front of the field. Although this was the case towards the later stages of last season, we now know why they were able to come closer. Both Ferrari and Red Bull were holding on to updates for this season. The new floor height increase even worsened the situation as it took away the downforce levels of the floor. While Red Bull found a way to win back this loss in performance, Mercedes is still struggling. Do you think Mercedes will ditch their zero side pod concept? Do you think Wolff is the right man to lead his team back to the top? And do you think Hamilton will remain at Mercedes? Let me know in the comments section below.